या देवी स्तूयते नित्यं विभुतैर्वेदपारगैः सा मे वसतु जिह्वाग्रे ब्रह्मरूपा सरस्वती। या श्रद्धा धारणा मेधा वाग्देवी विधिवल्लभा भक्तजिह्वाग्रसदना समाधिगुणधायिनी। नमामि नारायणपादपङ्कजं करोमि नारायणपूजनं सदा वदामि नारायणनामनिर्मलं स्मरामि नारायणतत्त्वमव्ययम्। यस्य प्रसादात् अहमेव विष्णुः मय्येव सर्वं परिकल्पितं च इत्थं विजानामि सदात्मरूपं तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम्। अपारकरुणासिन्धुं ज्ञानदं शान्तरूपिणं श्री चन्द्रशेखरेन्द्रगुरुं नमामि मुदान्वहम्। ध्यानमूलं गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलं गुरोः पदं मंत्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यं मोक्षमूलं गुरोः कृपा। Invoking the grace of Vagdevi Goddess Saraswati, Guru Ayappan, Mahapariva and Guru Parampara, we are now on verse number 6 of Dasakam 23. We completed the meaning and this sloka, chanting of the sloka. The verse number 6 said, then receiving hymns and mantras from Narada, he practiced, Chitraketu practiced austerities with the sole object of propitiating thee in the form of Adisesha. And in 7 days, he got the position of the supreme head of the Vidyadharas. But in spite of that, he continued to worship thee without any reduction in his favor. In this is contained in the chapter Canto 6, chapter 16 to 29 is contained in this verse number 6. Here it is explained here that he got the mantras from Narada. He got the mantras from Narada after the Narada initially gave him the vision that you are not the body. When he understood that I am not the body, he got relief from him. And in Bhagavata there is an explanation also given there in verse number 15 saying that enlightened by the Upadesha or advice of Narada, King Chitraketu became aware of the spiritual knowledge. As an elephant becomes free from a muddy reservoir, so too King Chitraketu came out of the dark well of family life. Griha Antakupa is the meaning given there. So with this kind of being relieved from the sorrow, he got more enlightened and he started worshipping the Lord. Now, so he engaged in that, continuing the worship of the. Before that, he was given the hymns and mantras for worship by Narada. And those hymns and particularly the mantras which we saw in the last chapter, in the last session, mantra 18 and mantra 25. Primarily, they are the mantras given for helping him into worship the Lord without any kind of obstacle. Now it is mentioned here that he worshipped the Lord in the form of Adisesha. The Adisesha is brought about here. So I thought I should clarify that also. We saw the mantra number 18, it was said that Namastubhyam Bhagavate Vasudevaya Demi Pradyumnasya Aniruddhaya Namaha Sankarshanaya. Pradyumna, Aniruddha and Sankarshana is the forms of Vasudeva itself. Pradyumna is the creation aspect, Aniruddha is the sustenance, and Sankarshana is the samhara or dissolution. The word Sankarshana also has got other meanings also, that it is not only dissolution, it is also the laya. The Sankarshana means gaining absorption with the Lord also is called the Sankarshana aspect. So that is why the king wanted now the darshan of Ishvara and Mukti. And therefore for that purpose he worshipped Lord Adisesha, because Lord Adisesha represents the Jnana aspect of Vasudeva. It should be seen that way. That is why he worshipped him as the Sankarshana Murti, or who is in the form of Adisesha, which is the Laya aspect, so that one can gain the Jnanam, can gain the absorption and gain the knowledge. That's why it is told as in the worship is in the form of Adisesha, it is said. Then it's mentioned here that he worshipped him for 7 days in Bhagavad it is mentioned, he did not even take any food, he was just fasting totally and he was only drinking water. So like that he worshipped, and but by continuously chanting the mantras given by Narada with great care and attention. This is given in the verse number 27 of the Bhagavatam in the same chapter 16. Then at that time, when he worshipped, then he got the position in 7 days as the Vidyadhara. Vidyadhara is an elevated position. Should be noted, understood here as that the Siddhas, the Kinnaras, the Vidyadharas, they all belong to the elevated position of the devotees. The Gandharvas comes first, Kinnaras, Vidyadharas, and finally Siddhas are the liberated souls. They are also elevated position. And therefore, being totally attached to the Lord with supreme devotion when he worshipped, he got elevated to the position of the Vidyadharas, not Vidyadharas as the king of the Vidyadharas. Means that stands for the Uttama Jnanam. Vidyadharas is the most divine state, exalted state of the Adhyatmika Avastha, which is in the Sukshma Mandala or in the subtler region. But Chitraketu was unrelenting in his approach. He was not interested in any position. And therefore it is mentioned here that although he was given the exalted status as the supreme head of the Vidyadharas, he continued his worship unremittingly. He did not give any importance to the extraordinary even powers of Siddhi which he acquired by being the head of the Vidyadhara. But he continued his worship for gaining Bhagavad Jnanam unrelentlessly or unremittingly without any compromise. Because his objective was to have two things, Ishvara Darshana and Atma Darshana. Through Ishvara Darshana to gain the Atma Darshana. He wanted only self-knowledge, and therefore the Atma Darshana can be obtained only when we gain the vision of the Lord. So he worked for that. He was not interested in anything else, and that's why it is mentioned that he continued to worship without any reduction in his any kind of reduction in the enthusiasm. This should be seen as an exalted devotee. He continued his worship. It is what said. He was interested only in the mukti, in the liberation. Mukti is nothing but, in Bhagavad it is mentioned in the Ekadasha Skanda, at hitva anyata rupam sarupena vyavastitihi. That means abandoning the anyata rupam, the rupa as a jiva, being absorbed in sarupena vyavastitihi, means in one's own form, which is nothing but the Parabrahman. So recognizing one's negation of the Jivatma Bhava and abiding in one nature as the Parabrahma. And that is why for this only he worshipped the Lord as in the form of Adisesha, who can give that mukti. Because the word Sankarshana comes from the dhatu krish. Krish means vilekane, means to withdraw and to gain absorption. So in that knowledge it is mentioned here also. And this he continued the worship. That's why it is mentioned here. We'll move on to the verse number 7. Tasmai mrana lagavalena sakasya shirshna rupena bhaddanuti siddhagana vritena praturbhavanna chirato nutipih prasannaha Dattvatma tattvamanughrihya tiro dadhata Tasmai mrina lagavalena sakasya shirshna rupena baddhanuti siddha guna brutena praturbhavan nachirato nutibhi prasannaha Dattvatma tattvamanughrihya tiro dadhata. Anvaya Mrinala Davalena Sakasya Shirshna Bhaddhanuti Siddha Ganavritena Rupena Achirataha Praturbhavan Nutibihi Prasannaha Atmatattvam Dattva Anugrihya Tiro Dadatha. Mrinala Dhavalena. Dhavala means white. Mrinala means the lotus stalk. Lotus stalk means as white as a lotus stalk or stem. As white as a lotus stem we can also say. Sagasya Shirshna with 1000 heads. Baddhanudi Siddha Ganavrutena, surrounded by bands of Siddhas, singing hymns of praise. Rupena, in a form. Achirataha, quickly. Pratur Bhavan, manifesting. Nutibihi Prasannaha, pleased with the hymns. Atma Tattvam Dattva, imparting knowledge of the self. Anugrihya, blessing. Tiro Dadhata, thou did disappear. Manifesting thyself quickly in a form with 1,000 heads, as white as a lotus stem or lotus stalk, and surrounded by bands of Siddhas, singing hymns of praise. Thou did bless him, pleased with his hymns of praise, and after imparting to him the knowledge of the self, Atman, thou did disappear. So here it is mentioned how the Lord manifested is talked about here is, the darshan is talked about. Lord manifested and blessed Chitraketu and in the form of a Adisesha. This is described here, the divine form. Sankarshamurti is the Ananta Shayana or the Adisesha with 1,000 heads, white as a lotus stalk or stem. White stands for the Nirmalatvam. That's why the white is mentioned here. Sattva-guna aspect is talked about here also, we can say. Surrounded by Siddhas. Siddhas are nothing but they are the exalted persons. They are the liberated persons. We can say like Sanat Kumaras. They are all the Siddhas. We said that earlier I said Kinnas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas and then Siddhas. Siddhas mean the final liberated souls. They are the Sanat Kumaras, Jnanis. So Siddhas, surrounded by, Lord is surrounded by the Siddhas, Jnanis, because he is going to give the Atma Jnanam. Therefore they are surrounded by Siddhas, singing his praise. Those who were, they were singing the praise of the Lord. It is talked about here. And then it said, the Lord gave the Atma Jnanam, imparted the self-knowledge, knowledge of the self, Atman. So the Atman knowledge was given to him is talked about here. Atma Tattvam Dattva. Atma Tattvam means Atma Jnanam Dattva. Then he blessed him. Anugrihya. Tiro Dadhata, disappeared. We can understand here also, I would like to make a mention also. Normally we talk in terms of three aspects when it comes to creation, sustenance and dissolution. The five aspects when we talk about Tiroda and Anugraha. Tiroda means the disappearance, means the Lord goes away after Anugraha, after giving the Anugraha. Tiroda also is a Maya aspect, covering. It's also talked about it. So the universe as the Tiroda aspect and Ishvara Anugraha aspect is considered to be the fifth. These five aspects of the Ishvara is talked about also. So here the Tiroda and Anugraha is both talked about here. The Lord disappeared. So he gained the self-knowledge is what is talked about through the Anugraha of the Ishvara. That is what is talked about here. And how the advice was given, the Atma Jnanam was given, they were all covered from the verses 50 to 64. The Upadesham is given to Chitraketu. And there what is given is what is called the Swarupa of the Atman, Swarupa of the Ishvara. You should always understand, Rupa is a Dvaita Darshanam. Now, Chitraketu got freed from the understanding that he is not a body, he is the Jiva. So this Jiva Bhava also has to be reduced. Jiva Bhava Durbali Karanam and Brahma Bhava Sabali Karanam is the main message of the Atma Jnanam. So that way, therefore this knowledge is given to him. Earlier itself, Narada has given the Mahavidya Paravidya, but it was more towards relieving him from their sorrows. So more emphasis was to dealing from the body. But although indirectly the nature of Atma also was talked about here also, there also. But then when Bhagavan has given, here he has given purely Atma Jnanam, whereby he has given him what is called the Swarupa Darshanam, which is called the Advaita Darshanam. So he had both, first the Rupa, Ishvara Darshanam is the Rupa Darshanam, and then thereafter he again what is called the Swarupa Darshanam, which is the Advaita Darshanam. So the first is the Dvaita Bhakti Dvaita Darshanam, second is what is called the Mukti, that is the Atma Darshanam. So he gave that. So Ishwar Bhagavad Darshanam and Atma Darshanam, and therefore this Atma Darshanam, this self-knowledge, is not a vision in the physical sense of as you see a God. It is the knowledge, the vision based on the knowledge, the understanding that the Brahman is the Parabrahman, is the absolute reality, which is the only one which exists. All are mithya. So this is that Atma Jnanam. That Atma Jnanam is given, and it is enumerated also in the verses 50 to 64 of the chapter 16, the same chapter, which we will see in the next session. Bhave bhave yada bhaktihi padayostava jayate tata kurushva devesha natastvam noyata prabhu nama sangeetatam yasya sarva papa pranasanam pranamo dukkha samanaha tam namami harim param. Narayana Akila Guru Bhagavan Namaste. Hari Om. Ya Devi Stuyade Nityam Vibudhair Veda Paragaihi Same Vasadu Jihvagre Brahma Rupa Saraswati. Ya Shraddha Dharana Medha Vagdevi Vidhi Vallabha Bhakta Jihvagrasadana Shamadhi Gunadayini. Namami Narayana Padapankajam Karomi Narayana Pujanam Sada Vadami Narayana Namanirmalam Smarami Narayana Tattvam Abhyayam. Yasya Prasadat Ahamev Vishnuhu Mayeva Sarvam Parikalpitam Cha Ittam Vijanami Sadatmarubam Tasyangri Padmam Pranadosmi Nityam. Dhyanamoolam Guror Murtihi Pujamulam Guror Padam Mantramulam Guror Vakyam Mokshamulam Guror Kripa Apara Karnasindam Jnanadam Chandrashekaram Apara Karnamutim Jnanadam Shantarubinam Sri Chandrasekarendra Gurum Pranamami Mudan Maham. Invoking the grace of Vagdevi Goddess Saraswati, Guru Vairappan, Guru Parampara, Mahapiriva and Guru Parampara, we are now continuing our discussion on verse number 7 of Dasakam 23. And it was mentioned in the law in this verse that Lord appeared in the form of Sankarshana or Adishesha with 1,000 heads before Chitraketu, who got the Upadesha from Narada and Angirasa and started worshipping the Lord. And the effect of the worship is Ishwara Darshanam. And this Ishwara Darshanam is for Atma Darshanam, means Atma Jnanam. So for Atma Jnanat, Ishwara Darshanam should be understood that way. And then we said that the Lord in the Maha Shankarshana gave what is called the Atma Tattva or the Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of the self to Chitraketu. These are covered in the verses number 50 to 64. 50 is the introductory one. From 51 to 64 talks about the Brahma Vidya. Very powerful verses. I thought we should spend a little more time elaborating it, with also linking it with the Bhagavad Gita. The very first 51st verse, the Lord says, Yatra Narada Angirobhyam Te Vyakritam Me Anusasanam Samsiddhosi Taya Rajan Vidya Dasanachame. Meaning, what he said is that as a result of your having Anusasana, means accepted the advice, Vyakritam, words spoken by the great sages Narada and Angiras, you have now gained the knowledge of absolute reality. Vidya is the absolute Brahma Vidya, and also got my darshan. So Lord says indirectly that you are now fit for gaining the knowledge, which I will further unfold to you so that it becomes part of you. In gaining any knowledge, the adhikaritvam is necessary, the qualification is necessary. And therefore, this qualification is what is talked about here. And Chitraketu has gained this qualification, and therefore the Lord is ready to give this Upadesha to Chitraketu. And then it starts with the verse number 51, which is a very important verse, which says, Aham vai sarva bhutani bhutatma bhuta bhavanaha shabda brahma param brahma mamobhe shashvati tanu. He says, Aham vai sarva bhutatma. This is very important. He says, I am indeed the Bhutatma or the substratum of all the beings, Sarva Bhutani, and Bhuta Bhavana, also the cause for the manifestation. And then he says, there are two forms of mind. One is called the Apara Prakriti, which is the creation itself, and other is the Sabda Brahma. He says, Shabda Brahma Param Brahma. That I am the Shabda Brahma, always also called the Parabrahma. Shabda Brahma is the Omkara. The Omkara is the Shabda word can be used in different ways. Shabda means also the letter. Shabda also means the sound. So I am the Nada Brahma, I am also Shabda Brahma. Incidentally, the word Om comes from the Dhatu called Ava, Avati, Rakshati, means to protect. So from Ava, the formation is, the etymology is like this. The Man Dhatu, Man affix is added, so it becomes Avaman. And then Nakara is dropped, so it becomes Avam. Then Va undergoes a change called U. It's called Samprasaranam. So Va becomes U. So A plus U by Gunasanti becomes O. And then it becomes Om. So this Avati means that the Dhatu is protect, one who protects, and this becomes Om. So this Om is a monosyllable. So this Nada Brahma is me, Lord says. And this Sabda Brahma, the Omkara, and the Parabrahma is the other aspects. So these are two. One is the Parabrahma, the Omkara, other is the Maya, which is the effect. So these are my two eternal forms, he says, Shashvati Tat. Now, Lord has explained this in this manner, but Bhagavan, the same Bhagavan has said, Krishna has talked to Arjuna, he has explained it in a more detail in Bhagavad Gita, which I thought we'll go through in this verse. It is difficult to complete all the 10 verses in one session, but we'll try to do it in 1 or 2 sessions or 3 sessions. Let us look at this verse, which is a very important verse. So there are 2 types of prakritis the Lord talks about here. The word prakriti means that which has the essential capacity to create. Prakriti is also called the karana or the cause. So Lord Krishna says, here also Bhagavan says same thing here in this verse also, I have 2 prakritis. One is called Swarupa Prakriti, it's very important, and other is called Swabhava Prakriti. What is Swarupa Prakriti? One, that Prakriti which is the cause for everything. So the truth of everything without which nothing is possible. This is called Swarupa Prakriti. Otherwise it is called Paraprakriti. In this verse he is talking about Parabrahma, and he has used the word also Sabda Brahma. Sabda Brahma and Parabrahma relates to this Paraprakriti. It's called Paraprakriti. When we say ice is cold, that coldness is its Swarupa. You cannot remove it and still have ice. And similarly, Atma cannot give up its nature or awareness. So awareness is the Swarupa of Atma. It is not a quality, it is not an attribute of Atma. There is no other person there for whom awareness is an attribute. So therefore the I, Aham itself is in the form of an awareful being. And therefore awareness is the Swarupa of the Atma, which is called as it is not an attribute, you have to understand, it's not an attribute of Atma, like a color or a complexion, etc. And if awareness is the Swarupa of Atma, there are few other facts we should recognize about awareness. And in the Upanishads it says, it is Satyam, it is Ananta, etc. So from the various standpoints of our knowledge about the world, we say this awareness is Satyam. That means everything else is not Satyam. So this awareness alone is Satyam. It is not that we are refusing to accept another Satyam. There is only one Satyam, that is Atma. So generally we think that which exists is Satyam. But here the existence itself is taken as awareness. When you say is there, is pot, this is pot, this is whole. The isness is talked about here. And not that what exists is Maya. What is Maya, but the isness is the Satyam. That is the absolute awareness talked about here. And because it is not limited, Desha Kala Vastu Parichana is not there, it is Anantam. So Satyam, Upanishad says, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma Atma. So this is the Prakriti of everything. And therefore Prakriti here we say as the Sarvasya Karanam, therefore it is called the Swarupa Prakriti. Another Prakriti is called Swabhava Prakriti. Swabhava Prakriti, which we call as is Apara Prakriti. So the Swarupa is Para Prakriti, Swabhava is Apara Prakriti, which consists of the 5 elements, Akasha, Vayu, Apaha, Fire and Prithvi, and then which are both subtle and gross, and divided into what is called Karana, means the cause and the effect. Because the effect, the Karya is not separate from the cause, it's also called Prakriti. This is what is mentioned here. And therefore, we have the expression Karya Prakriti. From about physical body is consisting of the 5 elements. It is called Karya Prakriti. So also the sense organs, mind, prana, etc. So anything put together or created is Karya Prakriti. Karya means here that is produced, anything put together. So if you look at this Prakriti in its causal form, it is called Karana Prakriti or Swabhavika Prakriti. And that Karyam for this Prakriti is what is called the Maya, Abhyakta. So Mula Prakriti. So for the creation, the Mula Prakriti is the Maya. And this Maya is the Upadhi, material from which the whole creation has come. And the Upadhi is all for Paramatman. Therefore, Satchidananda Atma becomes the cause, which is the Prakriti, and the Maya is the Swabhava cause. Therefore, we say Swarupa Prakriti is the Brahman, and Swabhava Prakriti is the Maya, which is the cause for the creation. So, where does this Maya comes? It is in the product or in Brahman itself. It cannot be elsewhere because the product is Mithya. Because when you say this is ornament, the ornament, there is no vastu there. What is there is only gold. Here also the material is only, the substratum is only Brahman. So it is always Maya is called Brahmashraya. It is not separate. So it has no independent existence. And this aspect is talked about by the Lord in the 2 verses of Bhagavad Gita, which is 7th. It is called Jnana Vijnana Yoga. In verse number 4, he says, Bhumi Rapo Analo Vayuhu Kammano Buddhirevacha Ahankara Iti Yamme Bhinna Prakriti Rashtada. The verse is Earth, Bhumi, earth, Apaha, water, Analaha, fire, Vayu, air, Kam means the space, mind, and then Manaha, Buddhihi, intellect. Then Ahankara means the sense of doership. This is my Prakriti divided in an 8-fold way. It is presented as a model here. That means the Apara Prakriti is talked about here in this way, that he says the Srishti, the analysis of Srishti is talked about in different Upanishads in different way. But in this Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that these are the 8 angas. Ashtam is 8, 8-fold. Here tells what are the 8-fold subtle constituents, beginning with the earth, bhumi as tanmatra, and the subtle element. Tanmatra means that alone is there. In grossification, each element combines with the other 4 elements, which is talked about in the Tattvabodha also. Whereas now in this tanmatra, in this Srishti Prakriti, here Lord uses tanmatra means the 5 subtle elements, he says. So he says that these subtle elements, they are the karya. They are the aspects of the Prakriti which are Karya Prakriti. This divides itself into the 5 subtle elements. And Manas, Buddhi, Ahankara also added to these elements, since they are all products. They have to be looked at from the causal level. So the 5 subtle elements, with these 3 are the 8-fold cause for this entire Jagat. This is a model presented. We should understand that here that from the subtle the gross comes. For the first 5 subtle elements, the gross comes. So it is presented here that Akasha alone was there, then Vayu came, Vayu alone was there in subtle elements, then in Agni alone, in Apa alone, and in the Sukshma form they are separately there, and when it becomes grosser, they be combined with the other, which is called Panchikarna, which I wouldn't like to go into detail. But the cause of the mind we have to understand here is the Ahankara. So Manas stands for the Ahankara, Buddhi is the Mahat Tattva. So, and Ahankara in the verse stands for the unmanifest Abhyakta. Lord Krishna wants to point out all the causes. So he arranges them in the order that is generally discussed elsewhere. Ahankara is mentioned last because Abhyakta, the unmanifest, is the primary cause with reference to the creation. It is the Upadana Karana, the material cause for the creation. While Brahman doesn't undergo any change, the Upadana Karana, the material cause, undergoes all the change, and therefore it is looked at as the Parinami, that which undergoes modification. So from Ahankara it is talked about, the Buddhi, Mahat Tattva is talked about. That since Brahman is the cause, Brahman must normally we may say when there is a cause, we say it must undergo change in order to become the creation. Here it says as Parinama it does, and that change takes place only in the Maya Upadhi. So only from the standpoint of Maya it is Parinami Karana, means changing. From the standpoint of itself it is Vivarta Upadana Karana, means it does not undergo any change. So the material cause itself is analyzed as a cause that undergoes change and doesn't undergo any change. So Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam Brahma cannot undergo change. The Avyakta, the Maya alone undergoes change. And Lord Krishna says, this Maya Shakti itself has become the eightfold cause for the entire creation. So in an eightfold way, this Maya Shakti, which is called Abhyakta, which is not separate from me, is the cause for everything. So Maya, you should understand, is not a parallel reality. It is the Lord's own Shakti. It is Mithya. It is not same as the Satyam. So in an eightfold way, it becomes the Prakriti for the creation. Therefore, it is called Apara Prakriti. Because it is the cause, it is also called Apara Prakriti. The other Prakriti, Para Prakriti, which is the Surupa of the Atma, that is talked about in verse number 5, which we will cover in the next session. Bhave bhave yata bhakti padayostava jayade tata kurushva devesha natastvam no yata prabhu nama sankirtan vyasya sarva bhava pranasanam pranamo dukkha samanaha tam namami harim param. Narayana akila guru bhagavan namaste. Hari Om. Ya devi stuyate nityam विबुधैर्वेद पारकैः सामे वसतु जिह्वाग्रे ब्रह्मरूपा सरस्वती या श्रद्धा धारण मेधा वाग्देवी विधिवल्लभ भक्त जिह्वाग्रसदना शमादि गुणदायिनी. नमामि नारायण पादपङ्कजं करोमि नारायण पूजनं सदा वदामि नारायण नाम निर्मलं स्मरामि नारायण तत्त्वमव्ययम्. यस्य प्रसादात् अहमेव विष्णुः मय्येव सर्वं परिकल्पितं च इत्थं बीजानामि सदात्मरूपं तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम्. अपार करुणासिन्धुं ज्ञानतं शान्तरूपिणं श्रीचन्द्रशेखरेन्द्रगुरुं प्रणमामि मुदान्भवं. ध्यानमूलं गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलं गुरोः पदं मन्त्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यं मोक्षमूलं गुरोः कृपा. Invoking the grace of Vagdevi Goddess Saraswati, Guru Ayappan, Mahapariva and Guru Parampara, we are continuing our discussion on verse number 7 of Dasakam 23, relating it to Bhagavatam, verse number starting from 50. In verse number 7 of 23, it was mentioned that Bhagavan, as Adishesha, gave the Atma Tattva, the knowledge about the self, to Chitraketu. We covered last time the verse number 50 and 51. And in 51, he said, Aham vai sarva bhudatmi bhudani bhudatma bhudabhavanaha. Linking it with the Bhagavad Gita, Jnana Vijnana Yoga, chapter 7, verse number 4. We said, it is nothing but the apara prakriti, the lower prakriti of the Lord. Sarva bhutani bhudatma bhudabhavanaha. I am the cause of the living beings and I represent the 5 elements. The cause is the Abhyakta, which is called the Maya Shakti, and which is the cause of the creation, immediate cause of creation, proximate cause of creation, of course, and which forms part of the Apara Prakriti or lower Prakriti, and also the 5 elements. We covered that in detail last time and said that this represents the Swabhava, not the Swarupa, but the twofold Prakriti we talked about, and it was said that it is the Swabhava Prakriti of the Lord. In verse number 5 of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, Lord talks about what is called the Para Prakriti. That is covered in, the Lord says, first he said, Apareyam iti sattvam prakritim viddhi me param jiva bhutam mahabahu Yayedam dharyade jagat. Then he says, this is my lower prakriti, whereas other than this, please understand, my para prakriti, my higher prakriti, which is, yam is apara prakriti. Then he says, other than this, itaha, viddhihi, please understand, mam param prakriti, the higher prakriti, which is the essential nature of the individual. By this, world is sustained, O Arjuna. So, he says, what was said in the earlier verse number 4, I talked about the elements in the elemental world and the Maya Shakti, all form part of the lower Prakriti. They are lower because they are dependent. Maya is Brahmashraya, and therefore it is no independent existence, therefore they belong to the lower category. Shankara says, Anarthakari, something that brings about, can also bring about the the undesirable also, he says. This is the Prakriti that creates all the problems. The bondage of samsara exists from you. It is the one that causes dukkha or unhappiness by giving you a jiva sharira. In fact, out of this Prakriti only, body, mind, senses are produced, and because of this alone, you have all the dukkha associated with them in the form of all other limitations. So these are all caused by apara Prakriti. Its very form is nothing but bondage of samsara. And therefore it is called also lower Prakriti. So lower Prakriti because of the bondage, and it's also because it has a dependent existence. So then the question comes, what is the higher Prakriti? Therefore that is elaborated in the verse number 5. He says, it is other than this, is my param Prakriti Vidhi. Please understand my higher Prakriti. And Sankara says, it is Vishuddha, it is pure. This para Prakriti is not touched by anything. Para means Utkrishtaha, the most exalted Prakriti. With reference to the other one, it is Utkrishta, because if you know this, you are liberated. The other Prakriti only will bind you, and this is not Utkrishta. So the Lord Krishna, speaking as Ishvara, says my real nature, and that is Jiva Bhutaha, that is you. In this Prakriti, Atma always remains the same. That Atma, which is Satchidananda Atma, is the Kshetrajna, the one who knows the entire Kshetra. The Kshetra means is the outer complex, the mind, intellect, doership, memory, body, sense, all this we can say, which all born of the Apara Prakriti, and in that reside inside is the Kshetrajna. The Atma that illumines all of them is called Kshetrajna, and that is the real meaning of the word Jiva. The Jiva Surupa is Kshetrajna, the one who is in every Kshetra. And in fact, in subsequent verse, chapter, God is going to say that everybody, that in every body, mind and sense complex, Sarva Kshetresu, I am the Atma, the Kshetrajna, etc. So this has been explained in this verse. And therefore, what you understand me, the Lord, here also Bhagavan says to Chitraketu also, you understand that I am that Param Brahma, the Omkara, by which the entire world is sustained. This aspect is talked about in this verse number 52, very important verse actually. And this same concept has been put also by the Vidyaranya in the Panchadashi as Astibhadi Priyam Rupam, Namachet Amsha Panjakam, Adyatrayam Brahma Rupam, Jagat Rupam Tatodvayam. He says that Asti is existence, Bhati shines, that is Sat Chit, Priyam Ananda. So Sat Chit Ananda belongs to the Brahman, Adyatrayam Brahma Rupam. And Jagat Rupam Tatodvayam, the Jagat which is Maya, nothing but Nama and Rupa. That we saw, Apara Prakriti belongs to the Jagat. So there are 5 aspects are involved. The first 3 belong to the Brahman, Asti, Bhadi, Priyam, Sat, Chit, Ananda, and Nama and Rupa belongs to the Jagat. That's why Jagat is also called Jayate Gacchati iti. Because the nature of Maya is ever changing, whereas the nature of Brahman, the Apara Prakriti, is never changing. So the ever changing always keeps on changing. Jayate Gacchati, born is gone. Swami Dayananda used to say that Jagat is big is an acronym. Big doesn't mean it's really big. Born is gone. Gone is born. And this cycle continues, and this cycle of samsara also continues. And therefore ever changing Anatma and never changing Atma. Never changing Apara Prakriti and ever changing Apara Prakriti and ever changing, never changing Para Prakriti and ever changing Apara Prakriti. These are all different words used to give the concept, same concept, and that has been elaborated in this verse. And later on, in fact, in this, you have talked about also the Omkara. I am the Omkara. In Bhagavad Gita also, in Vibhuti Yoga, Lord says, I am the syllable Om in all the Vedic mantras. Aham Sarva Vedeshu Pranavaha Sarva Vedeshu. Means I am the Omkara in the all the letters of the word or the mantras of the word. In fact, this Omkara aspect is also talked about, I want to touch about also in this Avastatraya Prakriya in the Mandukya Upanishad. And where it says that all that was and all that will be but Omkara. Each individual letter of Om, I already explained the meaning earlier. Now we can see also what it represents syllable also. Each individual letter of Om was made to stand for something. Because it comprises of Akara, represents the waking, the waker and the waking world. Ukara, the dreamer and the dream world, and Makara, the sleeper and the sleep experience. From the world experience also we can say that Jagat this is at the individual level states are talked about. The Jagat level we say Akara represents the creation, Ukara represents the maintenance. So Srishti, Sthiti, and then Makara represents the Samhara or the Laya. So all the three are shown, but all these are in Mandukya Upanishad also mentioned that they are not separate from the Atma. Same Atma, which itself is neither the waker consciousness, nor is the dreamer consciousness, or the sleeper consciousness. And it is not the consciousness in between waking and dreaming, etc. What remains after negating all this consciousness as such is the Atma. All other things qualify that consciousness. And this is the nature of Atma. That is yourself. That's what he says. That is called Chaturtaha. See, the Chaturtha is the word used. Chaturtam manyatesa atmasa vijnayaha. These are the meaning words from the Mandukya Upanishad, where it says neither the waker, neither the dreamer, nor the sleeper, but it is Chaturtha. What is looked upon as Chaturtha? The fourth, that is the real Atma. It is all three and is itself independent of all three. It doesn't undergo any change. Therefore, it is called as a Vivarta Upada Karanam. And whereas what the other things are Parinami Upadana Karanam, the aspects of the Maya, the aspects of the Apara Prakriti. And this is the Avastatra Prakriya used in Mandukya, also used to explain the Para and Apara Prakriti, also the significance of the Omkara. With this, it is talked about here also. And Bhagavan, further continuing, he says that I pervade the entire, I am going to the Bhagavata sloka only, I am quoting the slokas to save time. I pervade, in verse number 50, he said, the entire world and sense objects. And he says, I am the Sakshi of all the three states, which already we have covered here, Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, and I am unaffected by the experiences of the Jiva, the living beings, which all we covered in the Mandukya Upanishad. I talked about this also. And to this fact, only the Jiva is able to recollect it. Because of that, I am the Sakshi. This word Sakshi is very, very important. It is every individual is nothing but a team consisting of two, Atma and Anatma. Atma is the never-changing Atma, pure consciousness, and Anatma is the Jada, and which borrows its existence from the Atma. It's a reflected consciousness. No pure consciousness or Anatma cannot be a knower by itself. Consciousness is not a knower by itself because it is pure consciousness, nothing to do. Anatma alone, without Atma also cannot know. So Atma as a member of knowing team is called Sakshi. Anatma as a member of the knowing, as a member of the knowing team is called Pramata. So Sakshi and Pramata is the combination of Atma and Anatma. And it's a two combined pack. The knower as a member of team is there like two parents, but actually only one. So the Sakshi is the Nirvikara, seer, hearer and Vijnada, Drishta, Shrota and Vijnada, whereas the Anatma, the Ahankara thing is the Vikara, is called as the Pramata. He is called Pramata and has got various Vikaras. So this is the combination of Atma and Anatma, and this Atma is the one without that he cannot even recollect all the states. In fact, it is there in all the three states as a pure observer. The observer observes all the three states, and that is why when we get up from sleep, we are able to say that I had a sound sleep, because the Sakshi was there. As I am my Swarupa is Sakshi, so when I get up, I am able to recollect, means that even in the deep sleep state, I am there. And therefore, the Sakshi is the observer, which only observes. It has nothing to do. Whereas this Anatma, Ahankara Anatma, is the Pramata, is the knower. This aspect is also illustrated in this, elaborated in the verses in the Bhagavatam, that this, when the Jiva identifies himself with the body and forgets his real identity as infinite Atma, he is subject to birth and death and agonies or sufferings. In fact, it is elsewhere said also in even Bhagavata, in Bhagavad Gita elsewhere they said, there are 6 urmis where it comes here. At the body level, the person is subject to Janma and Mrityu. At the mind level, at the prana level, he is subject to the thirst and hunger. Shut Pipasa, and at the mind level is subject to what is called sorrow and delusion, shoka and moha. These are all the avasthas which are related to the anahankari, the anatma, which is the ahankari, and which is the so-called jiva functioning in the world. Whereas the atma is free from all these kind of experiences. The shad urmi is not there. Therefore, this atma remains as the pure self-effulgent atma, the consciousness. And in this verse, Bhagavan says that when you identify yourself with the world and you identify yourself with the body, in the subsequent verses in Bhagavata, he says, you are subject to all kind of sufferings. But when you detach yourself from the body and understand that your Swarupa is the me, the Paraprakriti, the higher nature, the one Sakshi, which is the observer of everything, then you are free from all kind of delusions and sorrows, and you get liberated. So the human being can gain this self-knowledge only through these, he says, these Vedas and scriptures under the guidance of the Guru. If one engages in devotional activities, his mind slowly gets detached from the material world and material comforts, and ultimately ends in knowing the reality. The sorrows also come to an end, because sorrows are actually created sorrows. They have no real existence. Only through Jnana Yoga one can give up the Jiva Atma Buddhi and gain the Ishvara Darshana, leading to Atma Sakshatkaram. This is how it is explained here. We'll continue a little more of it in the next session and complete this discussion on the Atma Tattvam. Bhave bhave yata bhaktihi padayostava jayade tata kurushva devesha natastum no yata prabhu nama sankirtanam yasya sarvabhava pranasanam pranamo dukkha samanaha tam namami harim param Narayana Akila Guru Bhagavan Namaste Hari Om. या देवी स्तूयते नित्यं विबुधैर्वेदपारकैः सा मे वसतु जिह्वाग्रे ब्रह्मरूपा सरस्वती या श्रद्धा धारणा मेधा वाग्देवी विधिवल्लभा भक्तजिह्वाग्रसदना समाधि गुणदायिनी नमामि नारायण पादपङ्कजं करोमि नारायण पूजनं सदा वदामि नारायण नामनिर्मलं स्मरामि नारायण तत्त्वमव्ययम् ध्यानमूलं गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलं गुरोपदं मन्त्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यं मोक्षमूलं गुरोः कृपा यस्य प्रसादात् अहमेव विष्णुः मय्येव सर्वं परिकल्पितं च इत्थं विजानामि सदात्मरूपं तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम् अपार करुणासिन्धुं ज्ञानदं शान्तरूपिणं श्रीचन्द्रशेखरेन्द्रगुरुं प्रणमामि मुदान्वहम्. Invoking the grace of Vagdevi Goddess Saraswati, Guru Ayappan, Mahabhiriva and Guru Parampara, we are yet again continuing the discussion, which is the concluding session now, of verse 7 of 23, Dasakam 23, where we have linked it up with the Bhagavad Gita and also with the Bhagavatam verse on the same, from verses number 50 to 64. This is covered in the 16th Canto of Bhagavatam, where we said that last time that Lord has said that the human being can gain self-knowledge only through the Vedas and scriptures under the guidance of Guru. And there the Lord says that if one is devoted and one gets detached from the material pursuits, then it becomes easier for him to get united to the Lord. And this is the message given by Bhagavan. So when we use the word Bhagavan, I would like to recollect here the definition of Bhagavan given in Vishnu Purana. There are two types of definition given in Bhagavan, even for Bhagavan Vishnu Purana. One says the Bhagavan's Kriya in terms of what he does. It says Utpattim Pralayam Cheva Bhutanam Agatim Gatim Vetti Vidhyam Avidyam Cha Savacho Bhagavan Iti. Here it says Utpatti means the creation, Pralayam means dissolution. Utpattim Pralayam Cheva. These other two Srishti Prakriyas talked about. Bhutanam Agadim Gatim. Bhutas birth and death. That the moments of the Bhuta, living beings in terms of birth and death. One who knows, Veti, Vidyam Avidyam cha, one who knows both knowledge and ignorance. Here, the knowledge and ignorance should be considered. Knowledge is considered knowledge of the things around, and also the ignorance. He is the truth of everything, content of everything. Therefore, it is called Vidyam Avidyam cha, Veti sa Vacho Bhagavaniti. This is one definition of Bhagavan given in Vishnu Purana. Another definition which talks about the glory, the attributes of Bhagavan, where it says, Aishwaryasya Samagrasya Viryasya Yashaha Shriyaha Jnanavai Yogaschaiva Shannam iti Ranaha Jnana Vairagya Yoschaiva. I will repeat again. Aishwaryasya Samagrasya Viryasya Yashaha Shriyaha Jnana Vairagyoschaiva Shannam Bhaga iti Ragaha. The qualities are talked about. Aishwarya means overlordship. Virya means strength or valor. Yashaha means fame, or we can call it also glory. Shriya means wealth, richness. Jnanaha means knowledge. Vairagya means total detachment or not having any feeling in terms of being wanting. Freedom from being wanting. That is called moksha, basically. So in that, it says samagrasya, in their absolute measure. Because Lord is niradishayaha, there is no one to compare. So Lord has got everything in absolute measure. Whatever living jivas have got, they have a limited measure. Therefore, it's called samagrasya. And this constitute the Bhagavan. So here, we should understand here, in this definition, that what is talked about here, the six-fold attributes. In fact, in that, the five-fold attributes belong to the Maya. Other than Vairagya, the Aishwaryam, Viryam, Yashaha, and Aishwaryam, Viryam, Yashaha, and Shri, and Jnanam. These all are considered to be the attributes. But the Vairagya can be considered as the higher aspect. Vairagya is asangatvam, one who is not attached to anything. Only the one who is not attached will feel that he is free from being wanting. Who can be free from being wanting? One person who has got fullness. So the Lord alone has the Vairagya. The word Vairagya also can be interpreted in two different ways. One is called Vita Ragayasya, one who is free from any kind of ragas, means attachments or aversions. Another is one who is the Visheshan, the Upasarga, V, can be Visheshan as Viparita Raga. Viparita Raga is this Raga we talk about, Kamaha, when we are attached. This is called Asat. Another is called Vishesha Raga. Vishesha Raga means that which is something which is unique, where one is not attached to material things, but one is attached to the infinity. Here, in fact, the word attachment is not the right word. It is one is connected to the infinity. So that Vishesha Raga is called Sat. Then Viparita Raga is called Asat. So one who is free from the Asat and one who is in the Sat itself, which is the Satyam of the Brahman. That is called Vairagya. So such a person who has got Vairagya will be free from any kind of wanting. And this Vairagya can be considered as not the Maya aspect. It is called the Varshita. In Uddhava Gita, in the Ekadash, the Lord talks about that I have the power over power. Varshita is a kind of a Siddhic power where a person can control the other person through his senses. So their Lord says that I have got power over that power also. The power is that I am absolutely free from any kind of wanting. I am freely, totally detached. So this glory, the glory of the Ishvara, is being talked about. The glory of Ishvara is that he is not attached to anything. One who has everything but not attached to everything is the greatest glory. Such a glory the Lord has got. Therefore, even the Akinchananam Vittaya we saw earlier is also referred to here as that he is the wealth for the people who do not want anything. And himself, the Lord, is a person who is free from any kind of wanting sense. That is being talked about. So that is the state Lord is talking about in this verse also, that when you have this kind of a detachment towards material things and being attached to me or being connected to me, then you will be free from all kind of sorrows. And this is the only way by which one can climb up in the spiritual path. Only when a person has this kind of a mental disposition, he will be able to gain the Atma Jnanam. That is what is talked about here. And the Lord says, then one can give up that Jiva Atma Buddhi, Jiva Bhava Durbalikaranam, and Parama Ishvara Bhava Sabalikaranam, Ishvara Darsanam taking place. Only then one gets that, come to know that he is not separate from the Lord, and he and Lord are the same. And this is called as the Paramatma Darsanam, which is talked about in verse number 63. And then in the concluding verse, the Lord says, O King, I have read out this verse, very important verse also. Tvametat, the concluding verse I am reading, verse number 64 in Bhagavatam, chapter number 16, and the Shodashodhyayaha, the 16th chapter, in the 6th canto, that is 6th skanda, 16th chapter, 64th verse, very important verse also. Tvametat shraddhaya rajan apramatto vacho mama jnana vijnana sampanno dharyan nasu siddhyasi. He says, O King, if you gain this knowledge given by me, if you receive this knowledge given by me with absolute faith, and apramatta means with alertness, you and free from doubt, of course, you gain that jnanam and vijnanam. I am giving you what is called jnanam and vijnanam, which is immediate, asu, and you immediately attain me or gain moksha, or you attain mukti. That is what the verse literally says. So the Lord says, I am giving that knowledge. What is this knowledge? Eka vijnanena sarva vijnanam. This, by knowing this knowledge, as it is said in Mundaka Upanishad, Kasmin Bhagavan Sarvam Vijnadam Sarvavidam Vijnanadam Bhavati. Kasmin Bhagavo Vijnadam Sarvavidam Vijnanadam Bhavati. Where the question is raised by Sutta, saying that what is that knowledge, knowing by which everything is as well known. So this is the Brahma Jnanam, knowing which everything is as well known. The same verse we can also see in Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord tells Arjuna also, Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshyami aseshataha yajñatva neha bhuyo nyat jnatavyam avasishyate. He says, idam sarvam jnanam. This immediate knowledge. Here, knowledge by which the subject matter is me, the Lord Himself, who is the cause of everything, and who is everything. I will tell you, asheshataha, without omitting anything, means completely. This knowledge, along with immediate knowledge, so the knowledge here is called, jnanam is called indirect knowledge, vijnanam is called vishesha jnanam, which is called immediate knowledge. Other word used is aparoksha jnanam. Because you should understand here, the Brahman is Nitya Aparoksham. He is not a vastu, an object of a seeker. He is the subject himself. And therefore, he is Nitya Aparoksham, and with this knowledge also will be Aparoksha Jnanam only. So knowing which, there is nothing more than this remaining here to be known. That's what he says. Yajñatva neha bhuyo anyat jnatavyam avasishyate. I will teach you everything without any omission. Because the Lord, when Jnanam and Vijnanam, two words are used, it means that Vijnanam is something a little different from Jnanam. Normally, even the word Jnanam itself can mean immediate knowledge. But because Krishna here says Jnanam with Vijnanam, the Jnanam is little less than Vijnana. Here, V is called the Vishesha, the distinctive. Therefore, Vijnanam is immediate knowledge and Jnanam is indirect knowledge. Immediate knowledge means what? Aparoksha Jnanam. And Jnanam is indirect jnanam, paroksha jnanam, we can take it like that, because where it is being taught about the nature of the Brahman. So Lord here says, I will give you this jnana with vijnana. For me it is a reality. That's how it should be. A person, Brahmanishta, alone can give this knowledge to other, impart with that, because he has the vision. He has the vision of the scene. The self is seen in the vision of the self. That is the state of the Brahmajnani. So for me it is a reality, and therefore what I teach you is something that I see. It is not merely what I have heard. This is what I see, and what I see I am teaching you. And because of this, these words have pramanyam, the capacity to produce the same knowledge, the same vision in you. Once you see, you have vijnanam, and you are left with no doubt any vagueness. This is one meaning of the word vijnanam, can say also here. Another meaning, Lord will also say, I will teach you this knowledge in a manner that will make it immediate for you, not indirect. A teacher is one who makes the students see. Means it takes him to that point from where he cannot but see. There is what is called a Nyaya called Shaka Chandra Nyaya. When the disciple asked the Guru on a full moon day or full moon night, where is the moon? Instead of pointing out the finger, the Guru, what he says, he takes the Shishya to the nearest branch, then he moves the branch nearest tree, moves the branches aside, and through the branches he points out, can you tell me what you see? Then the Shishya says, I see something white, full, etc. And then he says, that is called Paurnami Chandra. That means he takes the student to a point from where he cannot but see. And Krishna had done this in this manner. Even all the Gurus give this Vedanta Jnanam in that manner, whereby they take the student along with him and not only make him see. He cannot but see. That is the ultimate sign of the Jnanam. And that Jnanam is being talked about here, the Vijnanam. The Vijnanam is the Aparoksha Jnanam. In that Aparoksha Jnanam, one can claim that I am that Brahman. Aparoksha Jnanam and Jnana Nishtha are two things. One is claiming that I am Brahman is Aparoksha Jnanam. Jnana Nishtha is not forgetting. Because we have always been attached to Jivatva Bhava. And therefore there is always a habitual attachment to the body. So to remove the habitual attachment only, even Vedanta also they talk about Nitidhyasana. Shravana, Manana, Nitidhyasana. In Shravana, listening to the words of the Vedas through the Guru. Manana is removal of all doubts arising therefrom. And Nitidhyasana, he is removing the habitual obstacles or vasanas which come in the way. Because you are already used to a bhava, so jiva bhava comes. So initially, this Nitidhyasana is done to remove this habitual obstacle. Later, once the knowledge comes, it becomes a gratitude to Lord. It's that I seek nothing. I have understood that Aham Brahmasmi, that Vijnanam. You